Welcome to lesson 9.7, Simple and Compound Interest. Today we're going to talk about how to find simple interest and how to find compound interest. Alright, when we're talking about compound and simple interest, we're talking about situations that you'll be in the future. So, for example, I want to buy a car. Should I borrow from a bank or accept a payment plan from the car dealer? Another situation, I want to borrow 100,000 from a bank. How much will I repay in total? I want to invest money, $5,000. How much interest should I get? These are all questions that are going to relate back to interest. You would want to figure out how much interest you're going to end up paying based on how much you are loaned or how much you borrow. You also want to figure out how much interest you're going to earn if you invest money or if you deposit money and save it. Okay, so for this reason, we talk about the different situations. So you have the choice of Miss Morton's Bank, where you get 8% simple interest, Miss Burke's Bank, where you get 6% interest compounded annually, and Mrs. Cave's Bank, where you get 4% interest compounded quarterly. Now, we're going to talk about which one would you pick. We're going to go over this at the end of the lesson, and we're going to decide which one would you pick based on if you're investing money, borrowing money, so on and so forth. So I want you to keep this in the back of your mind while we're going over the lesson. First, we have to talk about these different pieces to our puzzles. The principal. The principal is the original amount you deposit or borrow. We use P in our formulas to stand for the principal. The rate of interest, PA, is the percent interest per year. Typically, we use R to stand for the rate of interest. Term of interest. The period of time the sum of money is invested or borrowed in years. Okay, so this is really important to remember because if we talk about borrowing money for half a year, we can't use 2. We have to use 0 and 5/10 because it's half of a year. All right, so make sure that you have these in your notes. When we talk about examples, okay, this one, so if you're borrowing 5,000 at a rate of 6%, and you're going to pay it back in 5 years. You can put this in each example box, and then for principal, you would circle borrowing, and then for rate, you would circle 6%, and for time, you would circle 5 years. Typically, each of these gives you an indication of which one they are, as the percent of interest is always going to be your percentage, your time is always going to be your years, months, days, etc. And then your principal is always going to be the dollar amount that you're borrowing or investing. All right, simple interest. Simple interest is interest earned only on the principal. So the percent is only applied to the principal, nothing else. The formula that we use for this is I equals, so the interest equals P, the principal, times R, the rate, times T, time. Okay, so when we talk about interest, we use principal times rate times time to find the interest. Now, when you find simple interest, that's not the end. If you get interest on something, you then have to add it back to the principal to get your balance. The balance is the principal plus the interest earned. So what this means, if you borrow $5,000 and your interest ends up being $50, then you owe the bank that $5,000 that you borrowed plus the $50 interest. leaving you a balance of $5,050. Okay, so I want to borrow $12,000 from the bank for college. If the interest rate is 9.5% and I'm going to take 5 years to pay it back, what is the interest I will accumulate? And then what would the balance be? So this is a two-part process. You do have to find the interest first and then the balance. So the first thing we need to do is identify each piece of the puzzle. The principal would be the $12,000. Your interest rate is the 9.5%. The term is 5 years. So now we have to use our formula. Interest equals the 12,000 times 9.5%. But now we learned you can't put percentages into an equation until you've changed them to a decimal. So we need to move our decimal 2 places to the left. So this is 0 and 950 thousandths times our time is in years, so we don't have to change this at all, and we multiply it by 5. Okay, so we can take a calculator for this and take the 12,000 times 0 and 95 thousandths times 5. Okay, so the interest we will earn on this loan is $5,700. So the balance is going to be that original principal, so the original 12,000 that we borrowed plus the interest we accumulated, which is the 5,700. Okay, so we can quickly add these two together, and we know that we are going to have to pay the bank $17,700 in those 5 years. So what this means is when you borrow money, it's not like borrowing money from mom and dad when they give you $20, then you just pay them back $20 when you have it. When you borrow money from any corporation or a bank, they charge you interest, which means that for every day that you have money out, they're charging you to have that money out. And the reason they do this is because of inflation and because they're in the business of making money. And if they just lend money to you and don't charge you anything, then they're not going to be able to make money to lend people or to pay their employees. Okay, so on this one, you do have these in your notes. Don't forget to put your formulas here. So interest equals principal times rate times time, and balance equals principal plus interest. Okay, and then you should have this one filled out. Now, you have this problem that I want you to try on your own. And I do want you to post this answer on Edmodo. So I want you to identify on Edmodo, I want you to tell me P equals, R equals, T equals, and then tell me what you get for the interest, and then tell me what you get for the balance. So in your post, it should be P equals, R equals, T equals, I equals, and B equals. Don't forget to use your correct symbols. So rate should have a percentage. Principal should have a $sign. Time should be labeled. Okay, and I will give you a helpful hint here. When we're talking about the term, in this case, the term is 3 months. So we have to figure out 3 months is not a year. We know that there are 12 months in a year and that we're only going to save for 3 months. We've only been saving for 3 months. We need to convert this to a decimal. So I know that if I simplify this, it'll give me 1 fourth. And I know that 1/4 as a decimal is 0 and 25 hundredths. So your term is 0 and 25 hundredths years. Okay, so at the end of the video, I want you to come back to this, try it, and post your answers to Edmodo. But for now, we're going to move on to compound interest. Compound interest is interest that is paid on the original principal and on any interest that has been left in the account. Okay, so what this means, and it's easier to show you a graph of what this means than to try and explain it with the bank terms. So with simple interest, if I initially put in $1,000 at a 5% rate, my interest for the first year is $50. For year 2, I still go back to the $1,000, my original principal, and my interest will still be $50. It'll be that way all the way down. So at the end of my term, at the end of 5 years, if I invested that $1,000, my interest will be $250 and I will have earned $1,250. Or I will have to pay back $1,250 depending on if I'm borrowing or if I'm investing. With compound interest, if I originally put in $1,000 at a 5% rate, in that first year, I'm going to have $50 of interest. Then for the next year, instead of having that principal being $1,000, now my principal is $1,050. It's the original $1,000 plus the interest from year 1. That will give me a interest of 52 and 5/10 for year 2. So then now my new principal for the next year is the $1,050 plus the $52.50 of interest that I accumulated in year 2. So it keeps compounding or piling up each year. So at the end of 5 years, my total interest will be $276.28, and then my total amount will be $1,276.28. So you can see if I'm investing money, I will have earned more money with the compound interest in 5 years than I did with the simple interest, and I will earn more money at the end. However, if I borrowed money, then I will owe more money at the end with the compound interest than I did with the simple interest. So this is something to keep in mind when you're choosing your bank to invest with or to borrow from. All right, so back to your notes. So compound interest is interest that is paid on the original principal and on any interest that has been left in the account. For this reason, we can't just use the same formula as we did for simple interest. We could, but if we did that, then we would have to repeat that several times. We would have to do it for year 1, then get our new principal or get our balance and use that as our principal and do a whole nother formula for year 2. To keep from having to do this, for compound interest, we use the formula I equals the principal times the quantity of 1 plus your rate to the power of t. So your principal times the quantity 1 plus your rate to the t power. Okay, so if you deposit $5,000 in the bank and the account pays 3 and 7/500% compound interest, what is your balance after 9 years? So we're looking for I equals your principal, which is the original $5,000 that you invested, times the quantity, you can't forget the 1, that's a constant, plus your rate. Your rate is 3 and 7/500ths. Move the decimal twice to the left. So we have 0 and 375 10,000ths to the t power. T is time. Our time is 9 years, so it's to the ninth power. The order of operations tells me that what I need to do is solve the parentheses first. So I bring down everything that I haven't used. In my parentheses, I get 1 and 375 10,000ths, and that is still to the ninth power. Now I need to get my calculator, and I am going to take my 1 and 375, oops, 10,000ths, and I can't square it. I have to multiply it by itself 9 times. That's pretty lengthy, so since I don't have a button for that here, I'm just going to have to do that times itself 9 times. So we have okay, so there's 1. There's 2. There's 3. Now, since this is a very time consuming process, I'm going to just save you the time, okay, and show you how we would do this on a scientific calculator. So we type in the 1 and 375 thousandths, and we would take that to the ninth power, which would give me quite a large number. Okay. And then I would take that number and I would multiply it by 5,000. Okay, so my interest after those 9 years will be $6,964. And since it's money, we have to round to the hundredths place, 7 cents. So $6,964.07 is my interest. Now, that's a lot of interest for 9 years. And then remember, you deposited $5,000, so you actually earned a lot of money by doing this, because if you add your original $5,000, you'll see that your balance was $11,964.07. That's a lot of money earned, but at the same time, if you borrowed that much money, that's a lot of money to pay back. Okay, so now what I want you to do, I want you to think, which would you pick? Which of these would you pick if you were investing and borrowing money? So when you come to class tomorrow, we're going to discuss this. You do not need to post this on Edmodo. I just want you to have it in your mind what you would want to choose for investing, so earning money, and which you would want to use for borrowing money. As always, if you have any questions, be sure to write them down or post them on Edmodo so we can go over them in class.